Thanks, Joseph. So, slide, please. Yeah. So, none of this would be possible without our sponsors, and so I would like to thank first T-Mobile for their support in this event, and I'm going to welcome Laura Bilazarian, their CEO, and she'll be moderating the next panel.
Okay. Hi, I want to keep it really brief about what T-Mobile is, but we've a company that we work with Lyft and a lot of other great companies in here to help them hire in a scalable manner by leveraging their extensive social networks. So their Facebook connections, their LinkedIn connections, their oldest social network in the world, which is just your email connections. We help them find engineers with the skill sets they're looking for, and bring them into the company in a way that really minimizes interview hours to hire and things like that. So that's who we are. We're also obsessed with great teams, which means great managers. We thought about building Manageable at one point because we were really passionate about this space as well. Really glad that Plato did it because I think they did it better than we would. But I'm really excited to get some insights from these amazing engineering leaders that you'll introduce. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So the next talk is going to be a panel about how to identify who to promote to engineering management. So first speaker is going to be Antoine Boulanger, Senior Director of Engineering at Box. And so after founding a few startups in Paris, you moved to SF and then climbed up the ladder in Box from engineer to M to director to senior director now. And you have too many engineers, so I'm sure it'll be very great insights for this topic. So please welcome Antoine. The second person is Alan Chang, Director of Engineering at Affirm. There you are. So you recently started actually this position at Affirm after working at Square and Council before. And Alan told us that he joined the community because he liked the challenge of scaling engineering organizations. So that's exactly the topic. So welcome, Alan. The next person is Radha Shenoy, Director of Engineering at TuneIn. She's Director of Product Engineering at TuneIn. And she shared with us amazing stories of difficult times when she had to take unpopular decisions as a manager. And she runs a team of 20 people now with 4 engineering managers reporting to her. So thanks for being a speaker, Radha. And then last but not least of this panel, Sasha Arnoux, Senior Director of Engineering at Waymo. And you previously worked at Google for 6 years as director as well. And so you've been a Plato mentor for many months now, and I can assure you that your wisdom has helped a lot of mentees in some tricky situations. So thanks again for being here.
All right, cool. Just to get the temperature of the audience, how many of you have someone you're thinking about promoting to engineering manager right now? Okay, a few. How many of you are thinking about going from being an IC to an engineering manager? All right, cool. And how many have actually gone through promoting either successfully or unsuccessfully someone to an engineering manager role? Awesome. Cool. All right, cool. I'm going to turn to the panel. What are some of the signs that someone might be ready for the, I'll call it a leap, but I don't know if it's a leap, to engineering management?
All right, I guess I have the microphone.
Yeah.
I need to start. Good question. So I think the question first is promoting engineering management are not necessarily the same concepts. I think first looking at it as a promotion may not be the right angle, because fundamentally it's I think it has a lot of differences in nature of the work you're going to have to do. I think as we just heard, and so those are the signs you're going to have to look for, right? Is that the first sign I think I'm looking for is a sign of commitment to that change of nature, right? So all questions around how am I going to lose my edge? I want to manage, but 2, 3 people because I still want to write code, right? It's like actually, then maybe it's a hint of more of a status play, right? Which obviously is a countersign. And more fundamentally, I think, I manage managers. And I think every organization is committing to fundamentally create a working environment where it's not only satisfactory, but also allows everyone to grow, everyone to learn, make it a rich place to come to work every day. And as you build your management team, or as you become a manager yourself, you're essentially part of that frame, right? So it's not about your own success, but all of a sudden you're the implementation, the incarnation of the company to essentially make sure that commitment is met, right? And that's kind of a flip in how you think about your contribution every day, right? So.
Personally, I think it's a combination of things. There are some people who are just born as tech leads. You can tell. It's just a matter of getting them to figure out that that's what they should be doing. Now, a lot of times what I've found is that engineering management is viewed as the only way to grow in engineering, which is completely false. So when I joined TuneIn, one of the things that we did as a team is set up these parallel paths where we said you can grow in management, but there's only so many positions. But then there's unlimited on the tech side. What I found, surprisingly, I was expecting a lot of people to say, oh, but I want to be a manager. What I found was a lot of people were actually very pleased to stay on the technical side. A lot of people came to me and they told me, they said, this is great because I don't want to be in a Scrum meeting and not give an update, because as a manager, what am I going to say? I had 3 one-on-ones and I was part of a meeting with product management to figure out what the strategy is. I love that I can grow in a technical fashion. But there were also the other set who came to me and said, I think I'm great at this. I want to try it out. I want to give it a shot. And it was up to me to make that choice. I didn't want to say no at the person's face. Sometimes it's best for the person to try it out and figure out that this is not a right fit, and I need to go back to being a technical lead. But again, that depends on the size of the company and if we have the time and the patience to let that person try it out. In most cases, though, people who are good at management, I think, stand out. They are more proactive than they are reactive. They build relationships not just within their team but outside of their team. It just comes very naturally to them. They don't wait when I go to someone and say, hey, this is very ambiguous, this is what we want to solve. They generally come back with a solution as opposed to complaints and just questions, more questions and more questions. As a director, sometimes I do not have time to just individually sit down with every person and go over the complaints or the problems when I give them a question or a ambiguous thing to solve. So I would appreciate as a director if the person who I'm trying to promote comes back with a solution. It may not be perfect, but I'm fine with it. And I think those are the qualities that I look for. Someone who can lead the team, someone where, even though you're not a manager, people just the team just turns to you for a lot of answers. And then not just your own team, but also, say, product management or design or any other team as well. So I think those individuals stand out as, future engineering managers. And just with a little bit of, polishing the rough edges, they turn out to be great.
So I generally echo the sentiment of, first of all, the vocabulary around promotions. It's pretty hard to kind of roll back. I think there's a future topic about how you go from IC to manager back to IC again, and for that going back to IC to make it not feel like a demotion, right? If you frame it as, oh, I'm going to manager and getting promoted, well, the converse side is going to be true. And the idea of having parallel career ladders where where you have IC management be on equal tracks, that's really, really hard to do. So I would first encourage us to actually not use that term. You can call it transition, you can move it into management, but not necessarily get promoted, and actually reframes the entire conversation. As to the idea of what to look for, either people who are themselves ICs and thinking about management, or people who are managers and thinking about moving their reports into management, I think about it in terms of signals. Looking for signals, looking for early signs, and preempt the signs of people who are really suited for the role and could do a good job. And in doing so some of the signals I look for, one really strong one I like is the idea of people who are able to think of themselves and growing their own skill set beyond kind of the core engineering things that you tend to do. There are some engineers in the world where engineering is their hammer and everything looks like a nail. And so every solution that they come to is like, well, I'm going to solve this in an engineering way. This is screwed up, well, I'm going to build a system to automate it. This is wrong, well, I'm going to build a system to do that, right? There's a bug here, I'm going to go, I'm going to go fix that, right? Design has a problem, well, that's okay, I'll build you a system to do that, right? Everything is an engineering solution. And there are people like that, and they're probably not well suited for management. In my observations, in my own experience, there are other people who kind of look at the task and realize that within their skill set and within their toolbox, there are other ways to actually get things done. A lot of human elements, a lot of communication, a lot of working through other ways to try to get things done and realizing, well, sometimes you don't start out with kind of the engineering answer. And I think for me, that's a really good early sign of seeing people wanting to go, they have kind of the right demeanor, the right means to think about management in that way. And they also, once they start kind of going down that path and seeing kind of the results they're able to get from that, being able to expand upon that. Really good managers realize that management itself is a skill that needs to grow over time. You're not going to get good at it immediately, and it's something that you want to try out initially. But they ask me for feedback. They're like, hey, how do you think I did there? What's the process that I put together? How can we improve it? What can we iterate on? And again, that's a really good sign. It's a sign that there's a skill set that you're recognizing is necessary to get things done and you want to grow upon it. And that's, again, a sign of not only somebody who can kind of do the management role, but they can excel in it and grow in it over time. And for me, that's kind of the most important part of all of this is that if I put somebody into management, that they're not just kind of hanging by a thread and they're kind of tolerating the aspects of management while they're doing their technical stuff, but they actually want to excel in it, they want to grow in it over time. And again, for people who are considering management, see if you can see these signals in yourself. And again, for people who are looking at your reports to see who can actually do that, I would encourage kind of looking for signals, looking for early signs of people who exhibit this kind of diversity of skill set as well as just a breadth of the things that they're able to do.
Yeah, so I really agree with the promotion as well. I think for me, if you create a system of incentives where it's a promotion to become a manager, then you are attaching a lot of status and rewards and recognition around becoming a manager. And that's not necessarily going to attract the right people that you want to become managers. So I think as a company, you want to de-emphasize the idea of becoming a manager as something really cool, but more like something that's a sacrifice for the team, and you want to make it more kind of a transition into this role. So that's the one aspect. I think in terms of identifying who to promote, you want to identify kind of typical leadership traits, in my opinion, which are, I think for me, if I can sum up, it's really around solving problems for others, solving problem for a team. If you think about, let's say you're organizing a trip with some friends, usually you take any group of people, 10 people, 20 people, you're gonna see a few people in this group that are gonna start taking the reins and solving problems and finding solutions to organize the trip and where should we go and what should we book, and they're gonna start doing all of the kind of practical aspects as well as the leadership around organizing this. So I think you want to kind of find the same type of personalities translated to the engineering world, who is solving problems for the team. I think that's really a typical leadership trait you're looking for. And then my other kind of typical filter is who is inspiring others, who has a lot of let's say desk traffic in the open space. Usually you're going to see people, a lot of people are coming to the desk asking questions, asking how to solve things, asking for mentoring. You're going to see somebody is becoming kind of a magnet. So he's really probably he or she is inspiring others. And that's also a typical trait I'm looking for. And then finally, in terms of identifying, usually when people come to you and they tell you, hey, I want to become a manager, my first reaction is to push back and kind of paint kind of all of the negative aspects of being a manager first, and kind of do this maybe across several one-on-ones and kind of really ingrain into the person, like, hey, like this is what the reality of being a manager is, to really like try and detect if that person has the real passion around being a people manager and is able to go past those obstacles. So usually kind of doing a little bit of a counterintuitive reaction to people asking to become a manager.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to use the word transition. Is that a word that we can use? Okay, cool. So when you're starting to transition someone to a manager, what are like the first 3 things that you do? Yeah, go the other way.
So first 3 things. So what we do.
Let's talk them out of it.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, so I was one of the first engineers at Box. I kind of grew with the company, and I think I made a ton of mistakes along the way, and I think as a company in general, we made a ton of mistakes on like how to answer that question. What we do have today is actually a really formal way of transitioning people into management roles. We have something called the TLM track, Tech Lead Manager track, which is right in between the individual contributor and the management track. And we usually, anybody who wants to become a manager, we usually put them on that TLM track for 6 months to 1 year. And we're gonna gradually expose them to like criteria as you're talking about. I think one of the first things we do is usually give them like goals and tasks around project management, like Scrum type, like Scrum manager, and like hitting some goals, some deadlines, like those for me. This is for me kind of the baseline of like, hey, like I'm managing a team. I think the second criteria usually that we're going to train the people towards is more around the people and team management. So delegating tasks, creating an environment where people have psychological safety and it's easy for people to feel included, to like propose ideas, to disagree sometimes, kind of really like making sure that this individual is able to create this type of environment for a team. Because that's, if you look into the literature on this topic, this is one of the typical criteria around a successful team is how safe people feel in the group. And then I think the third thing, usually kind of the last level, is we start giving the person responsibilities around performance management and compensation and hiring. Like those are like kind of the most difficult aspects. And usually we keep them for the end of that transition. Those are kind of the three big high level things we do.
All right, we have to cut it down. I'm getting signals on time, so we have to cut it down to one or two things that you do.
Yeah, and I had a hard time coming up with 3 things myself.
Let's make it one.
Yeah, I think one concept that's actually pretty powerful is the idea of providing them space. Space to succeed, space to fail, space to provide kind of the autonomy and the responsibilities of the role. It's very easy as you identify somebody and transition them to feel like, hey, I'm going to be there, I'm going to handhold them, I'm going to make sure that they're going to do everything right and that they're going to do everything that I want them to do, and I'm going to mold them exactly in the image that I am. And I think that's actually a mistake. There is a lot of value in providing space for people to explore the role, explore kind of their own autonomy, their own responsibilities, and how they react to it, and then what you want to do is turn around and provide them feedback and let them learn from that. And so that's what I've tried to do for people who I've moved into management, is to provide some guidelines and then kind of let them go at it and see what happens. A lot of times they will come back and tell me how they failed. I'm like, that's awesome. That's how you actually should start. I remember like my own first failures as an engineering manager, and that stuff sticks with you. And I think it's actually a really powerful kind of introduction into a completely new role.
Awesome.
I completely agree. What I've done is I've taken a step back and I try not to attend a lot of the meetings that I'm used to attending, just to give them that time and space, and just to make them realize what it takes to be an engineering manager before we give them that title. And then, have regular one-on-ones, in fact, more than we normally do, and just get feedback on what is working and what is not working, and just let them take it on from there. I also suggest that they start having regular one-on-ones with their teammates before they even get the title. It could, just start off as an informal thing, and then when you make that change, then it's not a shock anymore for anyone involved.
Sasha.
Yeah, so very quickly on top of what we already discussed. So I think being at Google, we have access to a lot of classes, so that's an opportunity actually. That's stuff I don't have to do. But one of the turning point I see often is the understanding of the new kinds of responsibilities you have. You represent a company all of a sudden, right? You don't behave on your own, and so typically that's a click. And then obviously, as I continue to having one-on-one discussion, it's also changing the discussion, right? So the discussion even becomes more about people in the team or what the team accomplishes, rather than what the newly moving manager is as a person and his personal accomplishments, right? And so that shift also helps tune the conversation.
Awesome. I'm going to go to the board here for the sake of time. How do you, we talked about this and we talked about changing the language, but how do you really get people to not see management as the only way to get promoted? And I'll give you a pause. And how many companies here have separate IC and management tracks? Okay, cool. Yeah, so just a few ways that you actually, make, besides changing the language, make people feel that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think ultimately the answer often is in the rewards, right? So and so I think it goes beyond manager versus technical. It's how do you reward different personalities, different contributions, right? And whether it's a manager contribution or a technical contributions, actually a group is a lot more diverse than that, right? Some people are going to be more infrastructure, some people are going to be very sharp on an algorithm, and so actually it's a question on your reward structure, right? And making sure that you have a path to be rewarded with what you care about, equally whether you choose to spend your 8 hours a day helping relationships, or to be black and white, or help some code or some technology progress during the day.
What we've done at my current company is we've also, there's this one person who's been at the company for a long time. He's taken the technical path, and the way to grow him, I think, is give him more responsibilities in that area. A lot of times, informally, a lot of people go to him asking for suggestions and questions because he has the domain knowledge. So we actually set up this architectural group that he leads, which involves all the staff and principal engineers, and they do meet once every week and discuss all of the engineering areas that we need to focus on, whether that be logging, whatever it may be, move to microservices, moving to the cloud, things like that. So that gives them an opportunity to open up in the technical space and not really feel that they're not contributing. Because I think a lot of times at a certain stage, engineers feel like they're not contributing if they're not managing people. So we try to address that by giving them more technical problems to solve.
Yeah. This is tough, and I'm gonna say this is tough because I remember there was another engineering manager who told me that when I started, hey, managers intrinsically have more authority and have bigger impact just because of the role. And I thought about it, I'm like, he's right, and he's right because a lot of times just the nature of the job makes it so that you just happen to know more about what's happening, right? You're basically more informed than your engineers. Your engineers are, in their teams working on their projects, and you have a broader review of what everything is happening, and you get to make decisions on where people go, right? What people do. So I think my way of tackling this is to provide a lot of transparency and provide a lot of autonomy and decision making, and having that filter downwards. My ideal is to, as people transition into management, is to make them feel like, hey, when they do it, hey, I still have the same level of impact that I had before in a different way, but it actually feels similar. And to empower people to do that as ICs, I think that's the hard part. To kind of raise the level of authority, to raise the level of decision-making for ICs requires, honestly, a lot more work from my end to provide a lot of transparency, provide a lot of space and autonomy. If you're able to do that, then the transition to management, it becomes less about, oh, hey, how do I kind of bring down the authority on the management side, and more about how do you empower the IC side, feel like they can make more decisions. And if you're able to do that, then the career tracks actually feel like they're in parallel, and they feel like, hey, you are transitioning from one side to the other, as opposed to kind of the promotion demotion model.
I think for me it's really around like the system of rewards you have in your company. A promotion is a reward. So if you have your two clear tracks between IC and manager track, and those tracks have the same system of rewards in terms of compensation, of influence, of who gets to make some calls, who is in some meetings, who has kind of influence and that type of things. If the rewards are similar on both of the tracks, and for example, you have like a staff engineer who's going to be compensated roughly in the same way as, let's say, a senior manager, and you have this correspondence between your tracks of rewards, usually it solves, I would say, 80% of the problems around creating that feeling that to have impact and to be rewarded, you have to go in management.
Awesome. Are we out of time? Is that correct? Okay, I'm going to encourage you to find each one of these people and ask them about the whole path from identification through becoming an engineering manager, and then even going back to an IC if it doesn't work out, because there's just another level of specificity that is really interesting, and I hope you have time to talk to them about that stuff. And thank you.